You've got your ideal spinner, whether that be drop, manual, or electric, and now you're looking at fiber and maybe you've gone a little clueless again. Well, good news is because in today's video, I'm going to be talking about some things that you're going to need to look out for when you are looking at different kinds of fibers, and also some fibers to stay away from as a beginner. Welcome Sweetpea Seeds Inspirations. My name is Sydney and I've been learning how to spin and process fibers over the last 2 years. No, I am not a professional by any means, but I have learned a thing or two about fibers and what to look out for as a beginner, and maybe even some fibers to avoid first starting off. Now, there is two things that you do want to look out for when you're choosing your fibers for the very first time, or even times after that. And one being micron count and the other one being staple length. And I'm actually going to dive down a little bit into what those are in this video. So we'll go ahead and start off with microns. What are microns when we're talking about fiber? Well, microns are going to be the diameter measurement of one single fiber of whatever fiber you're testing. And there's actually going to be an article down in the description box for you to check out if you want to know a little bit more on how they get the measurements. So why are micron counts important when we're talking about choosing a fiber and spinning a fiber? Well, it's important because it's going to determine on whether how fine or coarse a fiber is going to be. So the lower the number, the more finer the fiber is going to be, versus the higher number is going to be more coarse. A good range for a beginner is going to be between 25 and 32 microns. Again, you don't want to go too low in microns because they are finer, and with being a finer fiber, they can be a little bit softer, which makes them a little bit more slick, and they don't like to cling onto each other as well as a more coarse fiber. But you also don't want to go too coarse in a fiber because then they begin to become a little bit harder to draft, which we'll go ahead and get into that when we're talking about staple lengths. What are staple lengths? Well, staple lengths are going to be the average length of whatever fiber you're looking at. So micron counts are going to be how thick versus staple lengths are going to be how long. Now, I feel like the staple length is the most important piece that you need to look at when you're looking at fibers, due to it's going to determine on how far you can draft your fibers apart, meaning how far you can pull your fibers apart. So you don't want too short of a fiber because then it can be potentially harder to spin, and you don't want too long of a fiber because it can also be harder to spin as well. Being that a shorter staple length is more likely to be pulled apart quickly versus a longer staple length is going to, if you don't have the correct ratios when you're spinning, then it can spin up into your roving or your rolag or bat, whatever you're working with. So you want a medium staple length, which is going to be between 3 to 5 inches. To get my staple length, all I'm going to do is pull my fibers until they actually pull apart. And I might do that a few times to get the average staple length. And once I can get that, then I can take my measurement, which this is probably about 5.5 inches. And this is going to help you determine on how far you can draft your fibers, but also how far your hands will need to be separated from each other when you are spinning. And we'll go over that a little bit more when we go into the 5th part of this series, which we'll start learning how to do a long and short draft. What are some fibers that I should start with as a beginner? Well, I can tell you a little bit more of what not to start off with versus what I can tell you to start off with. So what I recommend not starting off with is anything that is plant-based, synthetic, semi-synthetic. Stay away from silk for right now. Silk, it is very, very silky and hard to work with unless it's blended with something, which most of the time you'll probably see it blended with merino wool. Viscose is an alternative to silk, so again, it is very, very silky. stay away from it for right now. And anything that is labeled baby, like baby alpaca, meaning that it's going to have a very short staple length and it's going to be really, really hard to work with, which I've got some in my closet right now. And let me tell you, it is hard to work with. But your best bet is to look at protein fibers, which is going to be wool, alpaca, mohair, angora. Anything that's going to come off in an animal is going to be considered protein fibers. And some people will say merino wool is one of those that maybe beginners should not start off with, but it's going to be the most common wool that you will see when you're looking at fibers, or what I have found. So if you want to go for merino wool, it is again a finer fiber, but I say the sky's the limit. So do what you feel is going to be best for you. Corriedale is another good fiber. It is cheaper than merino wool. It is a little bit more coarser than merino wool, but it can have a little bit of a soft touch to it depending on who processed it and how it's been processed. Highland wool is what I started off with, and it really got me knowing a little bit more about fibers and how they actually worked. So those are just some recommendations. Do your own research, and it's really going to be based on the staple length and micron count. If this video helped you in any way, shape, or form, please don't forget to hit that like, share, comment, or subscribe button, but also stay tuned for part number 4, where we are going to be talking about bats, rolags, roving, and spinning from the cloud, and how they are made. So I will see you for the next part. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you then.